This truth is difficult to accept because the human mind is trained to wait. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that someone will intervene, guide us, protect us, or rescue us when things become too heavy. We wait for parents, teachers, leaders, partners, society, or fate itself to step in and correct our path. This waiting feels safe, but it quietly steals our power. The moment you believe someone else is responsible for your life, you hand over control. You begin to live reactively instead of intentionally. You blame circumstances for your weakness and people for your pain. You convince yourself that progress will come once the conditions improve, once someone supports you, once life becomes fair. And while you wait, time moves forward without mercy. Responsibility is often misunderstood. Many see it as pressure, as weight, as obligation forced upon them. But responsibility is not punishment. Responsibility is ownership. The moment you say, "This is my life and I am accountable for it," something shifts internally. You stop wasting energy on resentment. You stop arguing with reality. You stop negotiating with excuses. Freedom does not come from comfort. It comes from clarity. When you take responsibility, you see clearly where you are weak, where you are undisciplined, where you are avoiding effort. This honesty is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Without it, improvement becomes impossible. People who avoid responsibility often claim they are unlucky. They speak of missed opportunities and unfair treatment. But luck is not what separates the disciplined from the stagnant. The difference is ownership. One person asks, "Why is this happening to me?" The other asks, "What must I do now?" Responsibility forces you to confront yourself without distraction. There is no one to impress, no one to blame, no one to beg. Only action remains. And action, repeated daily, becomes structure. Structure becomes stability. Stability becomes confidence. When you rely on others to save you, you remain weak by design. Dependence keeps you small because your strength is conditional. If someone supports you, you move forward. If they withdraw, you collapse. This is not freedom. This is emotional captivity. True freedom is the ability to stand alone without fear, not because you reject connection, but because you are no longer desperate for it. You can accept help without needing it. You can appreciate support without relying on it. This state is only reached when responsibility is fully accepted. Discipline grows naturally from responsibility. When you know no one is coming, excuses lose their appeal. You wake up even when you are tired. You train even when motivation disappears. You improve not because it feels good, but because stagnation feels worse. Responsibility also sharpens decision-making. You stop making choices based on comfort or approval. You choose based on long-term consequence. You understand that every action compounds and every delay has a cost. This awareness makes you precise. You waste less time. You tolerate less nonsense, especially from yourself. Many people fear responsibility because it exposes their potential. If everything is your fault, then everything is also within your control. This realization is terrifying for those who prefer comfort over growth. It is easier to believe you are limited by circumstances than to accept that you are limited by discipline. When responsibility becomes your foundation, suffering changes meaning. Pain is no longer proof of failure. It becomes feedback. Every setback teaches refinement. Every obstacle strengthens adaptability. You stop asking for life to be easier and start becoming stronger. There is no pride in victimhood, only stagnation. Responsibility removes the illusion that someone else owes you understanding, patience, or fairness. The world does not reward need. It responds to strength, consistency, and value. Taking responsibility also demands silence. You do not announce your struggle. You do not explain your plans. You move quietly, focused on execution. The need to be seen fades because progress itself becomes validation. This path is lonely at first. When you stop complaining, people grow uncomfortable. When you stop seeking sympathy, some connections dissolve. But what replaces them is self-respect. And self-respect is a form of peace that cannot be taken away. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is doing what must be done without resistance. Responsibility trains the mind to accept effort as normal, discomfort as temporary, and growth as non-negotiable. Once responsibility is accepted fully, fear weakens. You no longer fear abandonment because you have learned to rely on yourself. You no longer fear failure because you trust your ability to adapt. You no longer fear judgment because your standards come from within. Nobody is coming to save you, and that is exactly why you can save yourself. Expectation of validation weakens discipline and delays growth. Expand it in 800 words and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy. The moment you expect to be seen, something inside you becomes unstable. Your effort is no longer rooted in purpose, but in reaction. You begin to measure your actions not by their necessity, but by the response they receive. This is how discipline erodes quietly, not through laziness, but through dependence on approval. Validation is addictive because it feels like proof of worth. A compliment, recognition, praise, attention, these external signals temporarily silence doubt. But when discipline is fueled by validation, it becomes conditional. You show up when you are noticed. You retreat when you are ignored. Progress becomes inconsistent because it relies on something you do not control. True discipline is internal. It does not ask for permission or applause. It operates whether the environment is supportive or indifferent. The mind that seeks validation is always negotiating. It asks, is this being appreciated? Is this enough? Does this matter to anyone else? These questions drain focus and delay action. Growth demands repetition, not recognition. The body and mind evolve through consistent exposure to effort, not through praise. When validation becomes the goal, the work itself loses meaning. You start choosing what looks impressive over what is effective. You chase visible wins instead of foundational strength. Most people abandon discipline not because the task is difficult, but because the silence feels unbearable. When no one acknowledges your effort, doubt begins to speak. The ego whispers that the work is pointless, that if it truly mattered, someone would notice. This is the test. Those who pass continue regardless of recognition. Those who fail seek noise to reassure themselves. Expectation of validation creates impatience. You want results quickly so they can be seen. You want progress to be obvious so it can be confirmed. This impatience disrupts the natural pace of mastery. Skills, strength, wisdom, and resilience grow slowly, invisibly beneath the surface. Those who wait for validation often quit before the transformation becomes visible. Discipline thrives in anonymity. When nobody is watching, your intentions are exposed. You either act from commitment or from desire to be admired. The absence of validation reveals the truth of your character. Can you continue when effort brings no immediate reward? Can you persist when improvement is felt but not seen? When validation is expected, setbacks feel heavier. Criticism cuts deeper. Silence feels like rejection. Your emotional state becomes tied to external feedback, making consistency impossible. Discipline requires emotional neutrality. It requires the ability to act regardless of mood, opinion, or response. The desire to be validated often comes from insecurity, not ambition. It is the need to be reassured that you are on the right path. But reassurance does not build strength. Self-trust does. And self-trust is built by keeping promises to yourself repeatedly, without witnesses. Every time you show up without being praised, discipline deepens. Every time you resist the urge to announce your effort, focus sharpens. Every time you choose the work over recognition, growth accelerates. This is how quiet confidence forms. Validation also distorts decision-making. You begin to prioritize what others approve of instead of what is necessary. You avoid difficult work because it lacks visibility. You chase trends instead of fundamentals. Over time, this creates a fragile foundation built on attention rather than competence. Those who achieve lasting mastery understand that validation is a byproduct, not a requirement. They train when unseen. They refine when unnoticed. They progress while others wait for encouragement. By the time recognition arrives, it is irrelevant because their identity is no longer tied to external opinion. The expectation of validation also delays learning. Fear of judgment prevents experimentation. You avoid mistakes because they might be visible, but mistakes are essential. Growth requires error, adjustment, repetition. Without the freedom to fail privately, development slows. When validation is removed, clarity emerges. You begin to ask better questions. What must be done today? What skill is lacking? What weakness must be addressed? These questions lead to action, not performance. Discipline rooted in self-respect is resilient. It does not collapse under silence or criticism. It does not require motivation to function. It becomes a standard, not a struggle. The strongest individuals are not driven by applause but by alignment. Their actions reflect who they are becoming, not who is watching. They move forward steadily, unconcerned with recognition, aware that growth happens long before it is acknowledged. Expectation of validation weakens discipline and delays growth because it shifts the focus from becoming to being seen. Pain ignored becomes strength when used as training. Expand it in 800 words and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy. Pain is unavoidable, but meaning is a choice. Most people either run from pain or drown in it. They distract themselves, complain, numb themselves, or look for someone to blame. In doing so, they waste the very thing that could have sharpened them. Pain, when ignored emotionally and used practically, becomes one of the most effective tools for growth. Ignoring pain does not mean denying its existence. It means refusing to let it control behavior. Pain will speak loudly, demanding attention, sympathy, rest, or escape. Training requires silence. When pain appears, you acknowledge it, but you do not negotiate with it. You continue the work with awareness, not rebellion. The body and mind are built to adapt. They do not grow in comfort. They grow through stress, resistance, and recovery. Pain is a signal that adaptation is possible. When you expose yourself to difficulty intentionally, you teach the nervous system that discomfort is not danger. Over time, tolerance increases. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What was once feared becomes familiar. Those who treat pain as an enemy remain fragile. They avoid difficulty and protect comfort. This creates weakness disguised as self-care. True care is preparation. Training prepares you for reality. Reality does not soften itself for your preferences. When pain is ignored emotionally, it loses its power to intimidate. You stop asking, "Why does this hurt?" and start asking, "What is this developing?" This shift in mindset transforms suffering into structure. Pain becomes data. Fatigue becomes feedback. Resistance becomes instruction. Training pain teaches discipline. Discipline is the ability to act correctly even when the body protests. Each time you continue despite discomfort, you strengthen the mind's authority over impulse. This authority compounds. It carries into all areas of life. Emotional pain, rejection, boredom, and fear lose their grip because you have trained yourself not to retreat at the first sign of discomfort. Pain also exposes truth. It reveals weak habits, poor posture, lack of preparation, and flawed thinking. When ignored and used as training, it becomes correction. It forces refinement. Those who avoid pain repeat the same mistakes. Those who train through it evolve. There is a difference between destructive pain and developmental pain. Wisdom is knowing the difference. Training does not mean recklessness. It means controlled exposure. You push to the edge, not beyond it. You stress the system enough to stimulate growth, then recover. This balance builds resilience rather than injury. Emotional pain follows the same principle. Loss, failure, and disappointment can either break you or discipline you. When you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it, emotional strength forms. You learn that feelings rise and fall. You learn that you are not fragile. This knowledge creates calm under pressure. Many people think strength is aggression or dominance. True strength is stability. It is the ability to remain composed while uncomfortable. Pain training builds this stability. It teaches patience. It teaches focus. It teaches endurance without bitterness. Ignoring pain emotionally also removes self-pity. Self-pity drains energy and prolongs suffering. When pain is treated as training, self-pity has no place. The question is no longer who caused the pain, but how it will be used. Every disciplined individual has learned this lesson repeatedly. They have felt doubt, fatigue, and discouragement. They did not wait for pain to disappear before acting. They acted while it was present. Over time, pain lost its authority. It became background noise rather than a command. Strength built through pain is quiet. It does not seek validation. It does not announce hardship. It is visible in posture, tone, consistency, and calm decision-making. It is the strength that remains when motivation fades and comfort is unavailable. When pain is ignored as an emotional dictator and used as a training partner, fear dissolves. You stop fearing discomfort because you have lived inside it and survived. This confidence cannot be taught. It must be earned through repeated exposure. Pain also sharpens gratitude. Comfort becomes appreciated rather than expected. Ease becomes a bonus rather than a necessity. This perspective creates contentment without complacency. Those who train with pain understand that life itself is training. Every challenge is an invitation to refine character. Every obstacle is resistance designed to strengthen resolve. Pain ignored becomes strength when used as training because struggle, when approached with discipline and awareness, stops being something to escape and becomes something to master. Consistency matters more than motivation or applause. Expand it in 800 words and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy. Motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with mood. energy, circumstances, and emotion. Some days it is strong, and on others it disappears without warning. Applause is even weaker. It depends on others noticing, approving, and responding. Both are external forces, and anything external cannot be depended on to build a strong internal foundation. Consistency, on the other hand, is quiet and stable. It does not care how you feel. It does not require excitement or encouragement. It is the simple decision to return to the work again and again, regardless of condition. This is why consistency outperforms motivation every time. Motivation makes you start. Consistency makes you finish. Many people begin with intensity and passion, but abandon the path when the initial energy fades. They confuse enthusiasm with commitment. When motivation disappears, they stop believing something is wrong. In reality, nothing is wrong. The work has simply entered the phase where discipline is required. Applause creates another trap. When effort is praised, the mind begins to associate action with reward. You start performing instead of progressing. You work harder when you are watched and relax when you are not. This creates uneven effort and fragile habits. Growth demands repetition, not performance. Consistency builds identity. When you show up daily, even in small ways, the mind starts to accept a new self-image. You are no longer someone who tries, you are someone who does. This identity shift is powerful. It removes internal resistance because action becomes normal rather than heroic. Small, consistent actions compound. A little effort repeated daily surpasses extreme effort applied occasionally. The body adapts gradually. Skills refine slowly. Mental strength accumulates quietly. Those who chase motivation often overlook this process because it lacks drama. Consistency also trains patience. Results rarely appear quickly. The mind wants confirmation that effort is working. When it does not receive immediate feedback, doubt arises. Consistency teaches you to continue without proof. This ability separates those who develop mastery from those who abandon potential. Motivation often focuses on outcomes. Consistency focuses on process. Outcomes are unpredictable. Processes are controllable. When your attention stays on what you can do today, pressure decreases. Progress becomes manageable. Applause can inflate the ego and distort judgment. You begin to measure success by attention rather than effectiveness. You may avoid necessary but unglamorous work because it brings no recognition. Consistency does not discriminate. It applies effort where it is needed, not where it is admired. When consistency becomes habit, resistance fades. You no longer argue with yourself about whether to act. The decision is already made. This reduces mental fatigue. Energy is conserved for execution rather than internal debate. Consistency also builds trust with yourself. Each time you keep a promise, confidence strengthens. This confidence is not emotional, it is earned. It remains stable even on difficult days because it is based on evidence, not feeling. Those who rely on motivation are vulnerable to excuses. They wait to feel ready. Those who rely on consistency move regardless of readiness. They understand that readiness is a result of action, not a prerequisite. Applause fades quickly. Praise is forgotten. Attention shifts, but consistency leaves a permanent mark. It shapes skill, discipline, health, and character. These cannot be taken away once built. In moments of struggle, motivation asks, "Do I feel like it?" Applause asks, "Is anyone watching?" Consistency asks, "What must be done?" This question cuts through distraction and emotion. The strongest individuals are not the most inspired or admired. They are the most consistent. They show up when tired, discouraged, bored, or unrecognized. They understand that progress is not made in peaks, but in repetitions. Consistency also protects against burnout. Extreme effort fueled by motivation leads to exhaustion. Moderate effort applied consistently creates sustainability. This allows long-term growth rather than short bursts of intensity. When life becomes chaotic, consistency becomes an anchor. Even small routines provide stability. They remind you that progress continues despite external disruption. Consistency matters more than motivation or applause because it removes dependence on feeling and recognition and replaces it with commitment, structure, and quiet, unstoppable progress. Self-respect is built in silence, not announced. Expand it in 800 words and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy. Self-respect does not need an audience. The moment it seeks one, it begins to weaken. Announcements are for insecurity. Silence is for certainty. Those who truly respect themselves do not explain, justify, or advertise their standards. They live them consistently, whether anyone is watching or not. Most people confuse self-respect with self-image. They talk about boundaries, values, and strength, but their actions change when pressure appears. Words are easy. Silence demands alignment. In silence, there is no performance. Only behavior remains. Self-respect is built in private moments. When you choose discipline over comfort without telling anyone. When you walk away from what disrespects you without making a scene. When you keep your standards even when no one would judge you for lowering them. These moments are invisible, yet they shape identity. Announcing self-respect often comes from the need to be seen as strong. But strength that requires validation is fragile. True self-respect does not seek approval because it is not trying to convince anyone. It is rooted in self-trust. You know who you are because you have proven it to yourself repeatedly. Silence removes the temptation to negotiate your values. When you speak too much, you invite opinions. Opinions invite doubt. Doubt invites compromise. Silence protects your standards. It creates a clear internal hierarchy where your principles are non-negotiable. Those who announce their boundaries often do so reactively. They are responding to disrespect rather than preventing it. Self-respect built in silence is proactive. It is present before conflict arises. It is visible in posture, tone, and decision-making, not declarations. Silence also forces accountability. When you tell others what you plan to do, it creates an illusion of progress. The mind feels satisfied by expression rather than execution. But when you remain silent, there is no release. Action becomes the only outlet. Self-respect grows through restraint. Restraint in speech, restraint in reaction, restraint in impulse. Each time you choose not to explain yourself, not to retaliate, not to seek validation, you strengthen internal authority. This authority cannot be challenged because it does not rely on agreement. People who lack self-respect are loud about their intentions. They announce change before it happens. They seek reassurance before they have done the work. This creates a gap between identity and action. Silence closes that gap. In silence, you learn to observe yourself honestly. There is no narrative to hide behind. You see where you break promises, where you tolerate less than you deserve, where fear overrides standards. This awareness is uncomfortable, but it is the foundation of growth. Self-respect also requires the ability to walk alone. When you stop announcing your values, some people will misunderstand you. They may project their assumptions. Silence accepts this. It does not correct perception. It does not chase understanding. It trusts that alignment will eventually be felt without explanation. Silence also removes the need to win arguments. Self-respect does not prove. It chooses. It moves on. It understands that convincing others is unnecessary when your actions already reflect your standards. When self-respect is built quietly, confidence becomes calm. There is no aggression, no defensiveness, no need to dominate conversation. Presence alone communicates strength. Those who announce self-respect often feel the need to remind others of their worth. Those who embody it do not need reminders. Their boundaries are enforced naturally through consistency. Silence trains emotional discipline. You feel the urge to react, to defend, to explain, but you do not obey it. Over time, this creates emotional maturity. You become less reactive and more deliberate. Self-respect is also revealed in what you tolerate when no one would blame you for leaving. In moments of loneliness, fatigue, or temptation, silence asks the hardest question. Will you betray your standards when no one will know? When the answer is no, repeatedly, self-respect becomes unshakable. It is no longer an idea but a lived reality. Self-respect is built in silence, not announced, because the loudest proof of dignity is consistent behavior that requires no explanation. Doing it for yourself is the highest form of loyalty. Expanded in 800 words, and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy. Most people are taught that loyalty is something you give outwardly. Loyalty to family, to friends, to partners, to expectations, to roles you were assigned rather than chose. Very few are taught loyalty to self. And because of this, many live fractured lives, constantly betraying their own needs to maintain acceptance. Doing it for yourself is not selfishness. It is alignment. It is the decision to stop abandoning yourself for comfort, approval, or belonging. When you ignore your inner standards to please others, you slowly erode trust with yourself. Each compromise may seem small, but they accumulate, and eventually you wake up disconnected from who you are. Loyalty to self begins with honesty. Honesty about what you want, what you can no longer tolerate, and what you must become. This honesty is uncomfortable because it demands responsibility. Once you admit the truth, you can no longer hide behind excuses or distractions. Many people mistake sacrifice for loyalty. They give endlessly, even when it costs them their health, dignity, or direction. But sacrifice without self-respect is not noble. It is fear disguised as virtue. True loyalty does not require self-destruction. When you do it for yourself, your actions are no longer driven by guilt or obligation. They are driven by intention. You train, study, improve, and discipline yourself not to prove anything, but to honor your potential. This creates a deep internal stability that no external praise can replace. Doing it for yourself also clarifies priorities. You stop chasing validation because your effort has a personal meaning. Whether others approve becomes irrelevant. This detachment does not make you cold, it makes you grounded. You can give without resentment because you are no longer empty. Loyalty to self requires boundaries. Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls. In truth, they are commitments to self-preservation. Every boundary you enforce is a statement that your energy, time, and values matter. Without boundaries, loyalty to others becomes betrayal to yourself. When you stop doing things for recognition, your focus sharpens. You choose long-term growth over short-term comfort. You accept solitude over misalignment. This solitude is not loneliness, it is clarity. Doing it for yourself also transforms discipline. Discipline becomes an act of respect rather than punishment. You rest when needed, but you do not quit. You push when necessary, but you do not abuse yourself. This balance emerges only when your loyalty is internal. Many fear doing it for themselves because they worry it will isolate them. In reality, it filters relationships. Those who benefit from your self-betrayal will resist your growth. Those who respect you will adapt. Loyalty to self reveals truth in others. When you honor your path, confidence emerges naturally. Not the loud kind that seeks attention, but the quiet kind that does not need reassurance. You trust your decisions because they are rooted in integrity rather than approval. Doing it for yourself also builds resilience. When external support disappears, you remain stable. When praise fades, your effort continues. When criticism appears, it does not derail you. This resilience is the result of consistency aligned with self-respect. Loyalty to self does not mean ignoring others. It means showing up whole. When you are aligned, your contributions are stronger. You give from abundance rather than depletion. Many people look back on life with regret, not because they failed others, but because they failed themselves. They abandoned dreams, silenced intuition, and accepted less than they knew was possible. Doing it for yourself prevents this regret. It is the highest form of loyalty because it is the only one that cannot be delegated. No one else can live your life for you. No one else can carry your potential. No one else can protect your integrity. Doing it for yourself is the highest form of loyalty because it honors the responsibility of becoming who you were capable of becoming